So, Author, are you saying that the only representative of God that you would have accepted to make Sharia applicable is Muhammad and nobody since him?
Muhammad, Jesus Christ, Imam Mahdi, basically.
Right.
Who
So
is Imam
nobody.
Mahdi? Who is that?
He's basically like the modern day equivalent of John the Baptist or Elijah.
Right. So nobody since Muhammad.
Correct. No one that I know of right now would be authorized.
So therefore, isn't Sharia a failure then?
Yeah, basically.
And should all Muslims just abandon the idea of ever following it?
Possibly, unless Jesus Christ just comes out of the blue.
Yeah, but he's only coming back in the end times, isn't he?
Unless we're already living in the end times.
Yeah, but I mean, at that point, it's not really going to matter too much, about how you kill gay people, is it? I mean, there'll be bigger issues going on.
Mm-hmm.
The world
so you're correct. I don't think Sharia is something that should be followed or supported or adhered to.
Okay, but in Muhammad's time, then, when you did think it should be followed, if a gay person was found guilty of sex in public, would you think it's right that they were killed?
I don't know, because I don't completely trust a lot of the sources that came, centuries after the fact, right?
So, but we're talking in Muhammad's time, though.
I don't think I would agree on it just for them being inherently gay, or
But what is the punishment in Sharia under all the schools in terms of if a gay person is found guilty of having sex in public?
Yeah, I wouldn't actually agree with any of that. Like Sharia, to me, I feel like you need a living representative, and that's not the case right now.
So can I ask, what was the point of Sharia if nobody after Muhammad could be considered?
I don't know what the point is. It's just a failed man-made experiment trying to approximate divine laws and kind of implementing it. But it's a human recreation of what was supposed to be theoretically a divine kind of mandate. But
it wasn't theoretical under Muhammad, though. Surely it was real then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was real then. But again, there's only so much we could derive from Muhammad's time. A lot of the sources that came after were fabricated. So kind of basing our opinion on what Muhammad did based on sources that may or may not have been necessarily valid is kind of a bit of a stretch too.
So wouldn't it just be easier to say it's wrong to kill gay people if they've had sex in public and you've convicted them of that? Wouldn't that just be easier to say that?
It's wrong to kill gay people if they've been
convicted of, having sex in public.
I mean, like the whole idea of just lewd behavior, right? Even from a Western perspective, whether you're in U.S. or Europe, it's forbidden by law, right? Like lewd behavior, public acts of.
But even though it's not like accepted, people aren't killed.
Yeah, you aren't going to be murdered for it, essentially, and
you'll pay a fine. You'll be told to put on your clothes. If you do it multiple times, you'll be put in jail for 6 months for public indecency. But that's after multiple activities.
And there's clearly a difference between heterosexuals and homosexuals in the way that this law is applied, because I don't think under Sharia, if you're caught having sex in public as a heterosexual couple, you're not killed, are you?
I mean, the whole notion is kind of suspect because you have to have 4 witnesses, right? So which 4 people are just peeking through a corner, seeing?
Yeah, but that's irrelevant. We're talking about the morality of it, not the technicality of how likely you are to be convicted. We're talking about assuming you've already got to that point where you've been convicted.
Right, but I think the technicalities were put out there to make it almost impossible to actually convict people. So when you have these things happening in the real world, it's probably due to wrong implementation of law, because theoretically you can't even arrive at that position.
Well, then what's the point of the law if they've set it up that it can never be enforced?
The point of the law, I personally think is actually more protective if it was done to the letter of the law. So basically, if people followed the law and they didn't screw up, then virtually no one's going to get killed, because it's impossible to get 4 witnesses for anything.
Yeah, but this one saying, but what is the point in having a law that's so hard to enforce that it's never going to be done? Either the act
is mercy, so that it isn't ever done.
No, but either the act is right or wrong, and it should be punished, or it shouldn't.
Right. So what happens?
So why would you set up a system that makes it so hard to punish it that effectively it becomes a crime that you can't enforce, or a law that you can't enforce?
The whole idea of not enforcing it was the point. Say you have like 3 people publicly having sex all the time. Not 3 people. Sorry. Say you have 3 witnesses. Yeah. That always find these randos having sex publicly. Nothing's going to happen, right? The idea of having 4 people at any given time kind of spying on people and then having to verify their report, right?
But at that point, it because it's not, in the case where it's not just penetration we're talking about here, them just holding hands or being together in public, that can also be counted because it's considered intimate at that point.
Yeah, but that's where it gets a little bit more subjective. Like where do you draw the line, right? Holding hands,
and that's the issue, because it's not that solid. Of they're in such fear that I won't be if I go there as a heterosexual male, I won't be in fear because I know what that line is. But for these people, they don't know what that line is, and they're in constant fear for their life under this.
Also, sorry to interrupt, Nick, but just think this through logically. If the punishment, if the conditions for, say, convicting somebody of murder was something that was so improbable that it virtually never happened, what would that send out as a message over the crime of murder? That basically God doesn't really care about it too much.
I think, even if you go back to the whole idea of Jesus Christ and him throwing the stones, right? He was like, whoever has no crime or sin can cast the first stone, right? So you see these ideas of leniency and mercy kind of pervading. I don't think any of these religions were ever supposed to have much of a political component, right?
Yeah, but it's not about political. It's about enforcement of the law. Either these things are considered crimes in the eyes of God, or they're not. Now, if they are, why would you make it deliberately difficult to enforce it? Surely you want it as a, there's no mercy in terms of thieves, are there? I mean, it's quite clear, cut the hands off the thief.
I mean, if you look at like certain scholars like Jonathan A.C. Brown, who has a background in all these legalistic matters pertaining to hadiths and whatnot, he constantly says that a lot of the times these laws were deliberately made so that you can't enforce them for the purpose of mercy. That's why there's so many hadith accounts where you have people coming to the prophet and be like, hey, I committed a crime, I committed adultery, and the prophet's like, just shut up, don't tell me this, go away. And then they come back and the prophet's kind of scared. He's like, don't tell me any of this, please leave.
Yeah, but surely an easier way of having mercy would just say, well, it's not a crime.
But then you'll just, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's better stated as kind of instilling a sense of fair mechanism to just keep things in order, rather than actually executing these ideas and bringing it into fruition.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there's no equivalent in terms of, say, murder. Like, murder is not set up to deliberately be almost impossible to enforce under Islam, is it?
No, murder is just murder, right? So you
right. So yes, but this is my point. You've got some crimes that seem to be that are deliberately set up to be enforceable in terms of law.
But even universally speaking, like, there's no criminal system that would condone murder, right?
Yeah, but this is the point I'm making. So you seem to have 2 classes of crime. You've got the class of crime which is set up that you can reasonably enforce it if the crime is committed. You can reasonably punish, convict and punish someone. And then you've got another class of crime where the claim is that it's so difficult to, get all the witnesses together, etc., that it's basically impossible to enforce. Why would you have two classes of crime like that? Because to me, that suggests one is a crime that you should take seriously and another is not.
You basically summed it up. God probably values the enforceable crimes more, like on the priorities of the list, and everything else is just kind of gray area.
So Allah has gray areas on his law and his morals?
Yeah, of course. Morality is contextual.
But surely God decides what is right and wrong.
The ultimate criterion. But for humans, right, everything you do is relativistic. Like in Islam, they don't allow wine consumption, right? But like in the afterlife, it's perfectly fine. It's like a blessing.
But in terms of law, it's not relativistic. The whole point of Islamic ideology is, from every Muslim I've ever spoken to, is to say that this is objectively right or it's objectively wrong, and that's it. If God says it,
no, I mean the whole idea of looking at things in terms of black and white. This is not a good mentality for Muslims to have.
Yes, but it is the theology.
That's a derived theology.
Are you saying that God's morality is not objective?
God's morality is objective, but our assessment of God's morality is not objective.
Well, if he says something is a sin or wrong, does that mean that it's a sin or wrong?
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, like Muslims are not supposed to eat pork, right? So it's a sin for them not to eat pork. It doesn't pertain to anyone else.
Yeah, and then also it's a sin for gay people to have sex in public.
Like in the Quran?
Well, within Islamic jurisprudence, let's say.
But that's not divine, that's derived. That came centuries after.
So it's not God's law?
I don't think so.
So you would throw out all jurisprudence, all Sharia then?
I wouldn't throw it out. I'd look into it, but I don't think we should attach too much meaning into it.
Too much meaning to the idea of enforcing?
Yeah. I don't think they're enforceable constructs. I mean, they're good to kind of look at, like, from a historical perspective, like how ideas have shifted over times and cultures and traditions, but like enforcing it, especially in the modern day age, I don't think makes too much sense.
So is there anything of God's? Sorry, just one more by so religious, and then I'll leave it to you. Is there anything in God's law that you think is unequivocal, clear cut, should be enforced?
A lot of those ideas that should be enforced, you already see in the Western system, like, for like murder and rape and all of those.
But I'm talking about Islam specifically. Do you think there's anything within Islam that should be unequivocally enforced as God's law?
Yeah, like basically, like don't kill, don't rape, don't, like those basic concepts.
Right. What if they're not in the Quran?
Then they shouldn't be enforced.
Okay. So things like raping your slave. You're allowed to you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to have unconsenting sex with your slave from the Quran.
Well, how did they reach the point of actually having unconsenting slaves? They have to create.
That's a separate question. That's a separate question.
You don't believe in enforcement of speed limits. You don't believe in enforcing speed limits then, because it's not in the Quran.
I don't really like speed limits, to be honest.
So this is going to be my main question. In your belief, is the punishment set forth a deterrent or judgment?
Deterrent.
And that's where the fundamental issue is. Like, punishment is not supposed to be a deterrent. It's supposed to be justice, right? Like, that's when you come to the position that it's a deterrent, then you are saying, whether you like it or not, you are holding the position that homosexuals, by being homosexuals, they have a deterrent, which is the punishment of execution, right? As opposed to if you said that the judgment, the justice of them being homosexual would be execution, then that's a separate argument, right? Because then you can make that argument either way, really.
But when you're reach any argument based on the Quran alone about homosexuals, right? Those things.
But you don't believe in the Quran alone. You even asked for a tafsir earlier when I brought up about 489. So you don't believe in Quran alone. You're picking and choosing. But the main thing I want to stick on is this concept of justice being punishment being a deterrent as opposed to a form of justice. There's a fundamental difference in the belief of what justice is. In your mind, justice is a deterrent, as opposed to, in most like people who are not Muslim, at least, justice is the outcome of which somebody does something bad. You understand that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I feel like enforceable concepts should be something that's universally agreed. But then again, I also believe that Islam is a naturalistic religion, at least for the most part, right? So ideas that happen to be in the gray area, I feel there's a larger role for the human intellect and human reasoning. And to some extent, that's why we have the notion of free will.
So I don't think you answered my question. Go ahead, thinking.
Well, I'm still struggling with this concept, this idea that God kind of has two classifications of law. The things that he cares about human beings following, and the things that he just thinks are like, I don't know, a bit of fun, a little bit on the side. He's not really bothered about whether you break it or not. I mean, I can understand that some crimes can be seen as more serious, but to say that, like the way you describe God, it's like such a flippant, he'd toss a coin and say that, gay sex in public is a crime, but it doesn't really matter if you do it. He'll make it so unenforceable that it doesn't really matter. But I mean, it's a bizarre way of, this is
why do we have a notion that God is some draconian, inflexible entity that enacts punishment and good in terms of a dichotomized way of looking at things? Like, where does
I can answer that because he sends people to hell for not believing in the religion or believing in him.
Yeah, but that's also conditional. That depends on his will. He doesn't have to carry that out, and
he will.
It hasn't happened, so we can't prejudge him and say that oh snap, I'm going to hell. We can't say, oh, God is cruel because I'm an agnostic or something.
Well, no, we can. In my case, I've been delivered the message. I've read the Quran. I've read many of the hadiths.
Yeah, there's also
I've spoken to hundreds of Muslims. I've received the message, and I've outright rejected it on the fact that I think
there's also scholars that say that if a message came to you and the message wasn't received or processed correctly, meaning like the message came to you, you didn't understand it.
Oh no, I've understood it. I've read the Quran.
Well, let's say supposedly you thought you understood it, then God can't send you to hell.
Oh, no. Well, no, I have. I've understood the concept. I've understood the concept that I am supposed to accept that Allah is the creator of the universe, the creator of everything. Muhammad is his final messenger, and I have to accept both of those to get into paradise.
You're already damning yourself to hell when God hasn't even enacted the punishment. So you're
I'm not that. I'm not damning me. I'm just talking about the Islamic theology. I mean, this is what is written. So I'm just saying that I flat out reject it because none of it makes any sense, because it's logically incoherent, it's internally contradictory, and all the other reasons why I can't accept Islam as being true. But if it turns out that I've just, I've come to that decision, it turns out that, Allah is real and Islam is true, then I'm going to hell simply because the way that Islam is presented within the book, within the text, makes no sense to me. And I deserve hell forever.
Let's say hypothetically, like Ismaili gnosis or perennial philosophy, they got it right? right? And you never studied those paradigms. So does that mean the message didn't come to you?
Yeah, but that's irrelevant.
He's telling you that he does understand it. Your hypothetical doesn't mean anything because he says he does understand it.
Okay, all right.
I understand Islam. I mean, so unless you're just assuming that anybody who doesn't accept Islam is just stupid by definition, then you have to accept that some number of people have received the message correctly and decided based on the evidence they don't believe it. And those people's reward for that independent critical thinking is hell forever. Doesn't matter how good a person they are, doesn't matter what they've done in their life, hell forever. That's how we can say that Allah is, a dictatorial, authoritarian.
I mean, it's still a fixed perspective, because the thing is, when Muhammad came during the conquest of Mecca with 10,000 soldiers, right, there was a general amnesty. So what if God gives a general amnesty? We don't know what he's going to do, actually.
There wasn't a general amnesty. He showed up and said, "Stay in your house." That's not like a general. If I show up at your door with a mob of people and I say, "If you stay in your house, there will be no fighting, but come outside, see what happens," that's not an amnesty. You understand that?
What happened to the quote, like where Muhammad said, "Just as
Do you understand the difference, though? I don't. I feel like you never address what I bring up.
Well, I mean, this was another digression from my point. My point is that, you have to accept on some level there's going to be some number of people who have understood the Quran, and based on the evidence as they've seen it in their mind, they're not persuaded that it's true. And what Islam says about those people is, if they reject the message and it's been delivered properly and they've understood it and they reject it, they go to hell. And that's it. That's the theology. So this kind of dance around, well, we don't know what Allah says, we don't know what he's going to do. Well, he's told us in the religion, so I can't accept that as a dodge. And therefore I can judge Allah's character as, yes, he is this dictatorial, authoritarian thing.
There's no concept of Islam accepting only Muslims to heaven. I don't think that.
Oh, that's not. Oh, come on, author. That's not what I said. I gave you specific examples, the exact criteria as to why I would be sent to hell and other people like me. And it's not about saying that, no, there's not a single non-Muslim who won't, go to heaven. That's not what I'm saying. I've given you the criteria, and you know what Islam says about people like me.
Here, let me put it this way.
Well, that was clear enough, Nick, to be fair. Yeah. That's clear enough. And I think any dodging away from it, I just think is, I think it's dishonest. I think it's...
Well, I like, honestly, if you ask me, honestly, and say, hey, am I going to hell? I wouldn't have an answer to that.
Well, it's not your answer. It's what does Islam say? And Islam says, yes, I'm going to hell.
A better way to put it is a Catholic priest is going to heaven after he's been touching kids all his life. Yet me, being the atheist, who hasn't done that, is going to hellfire according to Catholicism, and it's the same way.
Think of it this way. Allah does not love the disbelievers, but you're trying to assert that disbelievers can go to heaven, which means Allah allows in things he does not love, but paradise is a place that is supposed to be the love of Allah.
Disbelievers are going to go to heaven. I'm saying it's a case-by-case basis, right? Like, I don't know what's in your heart. I don't know the weight of your deeds, or
a case-by-case thing would still be
deeds are irrelevant. Deeds are irrelevant when it comes to disbelief. That's the point. Sorry to interrupt, whites and religious, but at the end of the day, there is this criteria that if you've received the message correctly and you reject it, you don't believe it, then the punishment is clear for that, and it doesn't matter about the deeds. And that's a fact, and we know that's what Islam says.
All right. So at this point, I think we're starting to go into circles. So I think it's better if we take this to Discord here at this point. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming on.